Hello all, welcome to PA 593 Public Administration Theory, your online class, and I will be your instructor for the next 11 weeks. Before we get started with this course, I want to give you a very quick overview of what you will learn from this entire course. So the core of the spirit of this course is trying to help you get a better understanding of what are the core theories that drive the administration of public administration agencies in the US. So these theories are largely framed around issues of democracy, citizens' participation, engagement, and also citizens' inputs. So that's the broad framework with which we'll be trying to understand public administration in the US. And core arguments of this course is that public administration in the US has shaped public administration around the world. So it's a very influential field, though not much attention has been paid to these aspects in other parts of the world. I think it's a very important discipline that has actually originated and perhaps, at least in its modern form, transformed the administration and running of agencies in the US and worldwide. In terms of, I will get into the course structure in a bit, but I wanted to start off with the class structure, what we'll do each week. So there will be a quick 10-15 minute discussion, a lecture, followed by discussion, which is the first half of what we'll do together. Then of course, we will meet online and discuss for about 90 minutes. And this is the time for you to ask questions, clarify anything, or listen in to what we all have to say. And of course, offline, when we are not meeting, throughout the week, you have time to contribute to online discussions. You will write your responses to the questions that I have posed, and also respond to at least one of your classmates. So that's a requirement for your online discussions, which you will see on each of the modules that I've uploaded. I also wanted to run through a few quick assignments and deadlines, which are mentioned clearly in the syllabus. So we will go through case studies. So that's one of your assignments as well. So you will analyze problems in the real world, and from the perspective of the public official, and how you deal with it, how you deal with the specific problem or a set of problems. You will also maintain a weekly journal, which is a reflection of your readings or other thoughts that occur to you as you read. And in the journal, you can write anything you want as long as it is relevant to the reading of that week. So it could be a newspaper article you read, or a summary of your readings from the week, or even anything that you thought about, which may not be covered anywhere, as long as it pertains to that specific week and the material for that week. So you do not have to make presentations as such, because this is for the in-person class. But I would like you to contribute, all of you, to contribute in throughout the discussions, your analysis of the readings and insights that you may have to share. So you have a final paper, and the prompt would be uploaded a few weeks before the final class. So basically a short paper on your reflections as a public administrator. What have you learned? What do you aim to use, etc. So we do have a role play class, which we will try to do online as well, where you will take on the role of a person in a real or fictitious setting, and you will play out your role, so to say. So that's one of the assignments, which is related to case study, by the way. So finally, I want to point out this important fact that you will write quite a bit. You will write quite a lot. So get help with your academic writing, and I've included the citation for a book, which is very helpful in writing analytically. So that's something you need to focus on. Talk to me if you need help. There is a writing center on campus. Please use them, but do not get help from anyone to write. You can get help in editing if you wish, but getting others to do your assignments is a strict no-no. All right, so let's get on to the learning outcomes for today. So at the end of today's session, as I've said earlier, This is a very introductory class, so you will understand the history or evolution of public administration in the US. So we will also draw connections between public administration and other disciplines, and more importantly, place the context of some of these debates in public administration in the context of the world that we live in. All right, so let's spend a few minutes. Of course, there's no one sitting next to you, but let's discuss online. What's your understanding of the word administration? Let's do this when we meet for 90 minutes. But in the meanwhile, I would like you to make a few notes on a sheet of paper. Take a few minutes, pause this video, and write down what you think is the origin of the word administration. Use a dictionary, look up the word. Where do you think it came from? What does it connote today, and what does it mean to you? So we can discuss this when we meet online. So I also want you to take a close look at these pictures, three gentlemen, and try and identify them. See if you can get them right. And two of them should be easy. The third should be a little difficult. So again, make a note of these names, and we'll discuss these when we get together. I also wanted to introduce to you Frederick Taylor, who's considered the father of modern scientific management as we know it. Anyone who studied management studies has come across his name and his work, and I found this quote pretty interesting. So he basically talks about development of systems as well as development of people. So Frederick Taylor believed in not only having better systems in place to work, but also having first-class men, as he called them, like training people to be more efficient, training people to be more able to do more things faster. So that's the underlying philosophy of scientific management, which guides much of even public administration today in terms of efficiency and other factors, which we will talk about in the classes to come. So let's look at some of the historical key points of public administration. So of course you read in the first chapter on Confucius and the contribution of Chinese thought and Chinese cultural systems on how do you administer. So while I said that public administration is a pretty modern discipline, it's an American discipline in many ways. However, people have ruled and governed throughout history. I mean, since civilization came into being. So in that sense, it's as old as organized society, right? And of course, to that extent, it's also very global in the sense all countries have, of course, had their own systems where, for instance, in the Asian and Chinese context, the ruler was supposed to govern with absolute authority, and the subjects are supposed to follow him. Similar situations exist in some parts of the world today, which are not democracies, where there are monarchies or other parts of society which have absolute authority by a ruler. And of course, there are rules in their systems. However, the supreme law is given by the ruler, right, and his advisors. So to that extent, I think China would be a good model to look at. You could also look at Rome, and how its empire was built as also a very efficient system. Similarly, Ottoman Empire is also an interesting system of how they managed different people of different cultures, languages, religions through what they call the millet system. So these are some historical examples for us to look at in terms of how public administration has functioned throughout the world. I also want to, before we get into the specific readings, wanted to highlight the interplay of public administration around the world. So I was involved in this project of training and professional development of Indian Forest Service officers at Syracuse University, and I learned a lot about the interconnections between Indian Forest Service and US Forest Service. So just as a small example, I want to point out that Gifford Pinchot, who's considered the father of US Forest Services, he actually effectively founded US Forest Services, was trained by Richard Brandeis, He's a British forest conservator, and Brandeis in turn learned a lot and was experimented a lot in India because he was involved. He was part of the British Empire in India at that time. So in that sense, you can see the connection between uh, Britain, India, and U.S. in forest conservation and management. And I heard from an expert on these issues that many of the practices that Brandeis taught Pinchot came from his experiences in India. So in many ways, you can see how this circle sort of comes together between these three countries. So this is a photograph of some of the officers. These are mid-career people, and they're people with 10 to 15 years experience who come and spend some time at the Syracuse University, upgrading their skills and learning from the American counterparts. And here's a picture of India's first Prime Minister, 1954, with the Dean of Syracuse University, who actually spent some time in India, helping set up the Indian Institute of Public Administration. And so it's a small part of history which is interesting and intriguing. All right, let's get into the actual readings which I'd assigned for the week. And Woodrow Wilson's essay, The Study of Administration, is arguably one of how the intersection of public administration and political science. So that's something that I would like to stress and of course focus on, because one way to look at public administration is of course a very technocratic, very rules-based system. On the other hand, you could also look at public administration, and it's a better way to look at public administration as a subset of political theory, which is how do you manage democratic participation, how do you manage people, human resources, not just as tools to be governed, but as people who are coming to a system with their aspirations, with their ideas of what is right and wrong, and their own values. So that's another perspective. And I think Woodrow Wilson's essay is pretty seminal in terms of arguing for those aspects of public administration. And of course, if you read the Analects of Confucius, you would see how he frames the relationship between the sovereign, that is the king, and the various subjects, and including his own family, and how the general public is supposed to follow him, or so there's generally no scope for dissent in these systems. And aphorisms or sayings, have become policy in many of these contexts. And Confucianism and even contemporary Chinese society is based on the idea of harmony. So trying to keep balance and order rather than incorporate dissent or trying to manage a lot of chaos. So that's something you should pay attention to. So going back to Wilson, I think some of the key ideas that he mentioned, which I think are important, are that of course civil service reform must go just beyond personal management, and government should try to figure out how things do in the first place, in the way things that are right, not just the most efficient way, right? So his call is basically to look at how things have been done in the past, what are the best way to do something, and also for administration to just go beyond just the executive means of doing something, and base any way of governing or governance on sound principles rather than just technocratic or bureaucratic mechanisms. So in general, we could say that it is generally harder for taking a cue from Wilson's and Confucianism, the Analects of Confucius. You could say that it's harder for democracies to organize than for autocracies, because democracies by nature create scope for dissent or alternating opinions, which have to be incorporated or have to be negotiated with, right? Whereas an autocrat just says something and typically it's accepted. And also in democracies, you need to incorporate public opinion. You cannot ignore public opinion outright. And also, one of the things that comes from these two factors is that we need to be open to learning from foreign public administration systems or systems that are not our own, so we could incorporate much of what is good in other systems. So this is the other reading, so I will skim through some of these key points, which I think are talking basically about how does state level, local as well as national level administration play out, and what is really the objective of public administration, which is basically management of resources, management of people, keeping them well running and efficient, as well as making sure the objectives of the state are met, like whatever those objectives are, depending on a particular state or the country. So I will, if anyone wants to review Dwight Waldo's Administrative State, which is a classic in public administration, I'd like you to review it, read it, and come and share that with us. So I will consider that as extra credit. But it's a classic, and Dwight Waldo is one of the three people whose photos I showed you in the beginning. Confucius and Confucius reading, who you read, was the second person, and we can discuss this book as well as some of his Dwight Waldo's key ideas in the next class. While we are at it, I would also like you to look at American Society for Public Administration, or ASPA, and ARNOA, Association for Research and Nonprofits in Voluntary Action. So these are two research-based organizations that work the space of, the first one is of course public administration purely. ARNOA is more nonprofits, and there is intersection of public administration. So I would encourage you to visit their websites and also become members. So as student members, it's not a lot of money, it's $50 or $60, but you get a lot of benefits. You can attend the conferences and get their journals and tons of other benefits. So this is a book that I mentioned you guys for writing purposes. It's an excellent book on how to write for an academic audience. You can download the PDF here, follow this link, and hopefully this will help you become better writers. So with this, I will call it a night, and hope to hear from you all soon, and we can meet to discuss these ideas and any questions or concerns you may have. Thank you very much.